Hi, audiences of A Room of Their Own. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of A Room of Their Own, and today we have two guests from the documentary Manhood, Kerry and Rebecca. Could you guys introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Kerry Mack, a producer on Manhood.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Shaid, another producer on Manhood.
Manhood premiere at South by Southwest this past March, and is going to have its UK premiere at Sheffield Docs really soon, which is absolutely exciting. And I just wanted to ask you guys, how are we feeling since the release of Manhood, the reception it has, and the next journey at Sheffield?
I wish I could tell you guys more. We'll have more updates for you guys soon, but we're feeling really good. Couldn't have asked for a better premiere at South by, better feedback, better audiences. It was really couldn't have gone better. And then we're excited to take it across the pond for a little British sense of humor. I think will also bode well for this film.
Yeah, I mean, Sheffield is just such an amazing place to be able to premiere in the UK. So we're really excited.
Do you guys have any plan on other things to do during the festival? Maybe travel?
We are actually not able to go. Daniel, the director,
Oh.
is going to Sheffield though. So if anybody will be there, he will be there to say hi and represent the film, but we will be at others. Don't worry.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's some exciting news. Just kind of tell us a little bit about how you two met. And I know that you guys worked on Outer Boroughs films since the beginning, and you both had a journalistic background in school, and just how you guys worked together on this film and how the collaboration come about.
So I met the director, Daniel Lombroso, online. I basically just reached out to him because I was a fan of his prior work, called him up, and we started talking about penis enlargement, which I thought was really funny and crazy and weird at the beginning, but then I just started researching and getting into the topic and realized how deep and broad it really is. Then we started filming a little bit, and then thankfully Kerry jumped in and took us through.
Yeah. I Daniel and Rebecca had started the film by themselves, just kind of like trying to get something going and get a sizzle
Mhm.
going, really. And I jumped on board shortly after that. I knew about the project and I wanted to work on it, but waited till it was a little further along and then convinced Daniel like I should be the one to also jump on board for this. But it was a wild journey because we had no funding for a while. So it was like really, 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 really scrappy for a while. Shoots were like the two of them, if that, sometimes only Daniel. So it
Uh-huh.
started off slow, and has continued to be like a low budget feature for sure. But we were able to like bolster some funding and support and all of that a little bit after I jumped on board.
So Rebecca and you and Daniel were the two people who were just kind of found the subject and just started shooting. Is that the process?
Yeah, so essentially I the way we started the project was by just calling all of the urologists in America who
Uh-huh.
perform any type of penile enhancement. And then eventually we got on the phone with Bill, the main protagonist in the film, and immediately we sort of felt a connection and that he sort of had a lot to share beyond just the medical specifics of penis enlargement.
Yeah.
So Daniel booked a ticket to Dallas, which is where the his penile enhancement clinic operates out of. Yeah, we just sort of started filming every few weeks with him in Dallas. Sometimes it was just the two of us, sometimes it was just Daniel, sometimes we had a cinematographer, Victoria Campaner. Definitely scrappy at the beginning, but turned out amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Carrie, how were you able to kind of bring in some of the support from the after the shoot had already begun?
Yeah, we had a little bit to show for what they had already conquered and gotten been able to do
Yeah.
so with so little resources. So Daniel and I went to, I mean, he was already looking for funding very much on his own, but we were able to like hit the gas a little bit harder together, I think. Just
Hmm.
needed an extra person to kind of be wrangling and pulling things forward, although they were doing a ton, just the two of them. But yeah, we just were able to like expand our network once we had a little bit more to show. It's a tough topic to pitch people on because a lot of
Yeah.
people were very interested and curious, but maybe didn't want to embark on being the person whose name is on this kind of film. And it's easier to look back and think like they're lost, but at the time it also was like we didn't really know what the tone of the film would be later on. We knew it would
Hmm.
be semi-serious, but we also knew that we had a kind of wild and wacky subject matter to that we were bumping up against. I think it was a matter of like
Yeah.
how much we're going to embrace that or not. But it was a long time of pitching a lot of people, some of which were more interested than others, but it was
Yeah.
a long journey. Yeah.
I'm so glad that it like turned out so well. And I'm really curious about what really drove you two in talking about such a specific topics, and even the visual in the films are like there are many explicit parts of it, and there must be like in the environment that in terms of filmmaking that we're living in right now, there are like many backlash on that for sure, I believe. So like any obstacles that you guys have to overcome during the completion of the films, and then why do you feel like it's necessary for you to like overcome those and show it to the audience?
A big question on our minds throughout the filmmaking process was like how explicit should we be visually? We're talking about many men that have suffered consequences from their choice to embark on a journey of body modification and a very specific place. We weren't sure how much nudity to show or what felt appropriate or what felt like too much. That was constantly a topic of conversation, and we felt pretty desensitized to the nudity after a while. So we leaned on others a lot for their opinions, but it was a constant conversation through the filmmaking process and through the edit. We show a lot. So we sort of leaned into the topic, but it also felt disingenuous or something to be like talking around this subject of penile enhancement and not just show it and show you like
Yeah.
really what's happening here.
A big challenge of ours when sort of in the making of this film and figuring out how to pose it was that it is a taboo subject, but it's really about something so much more important and serious than penises.
Yeah.
I think figuring out how to frame the movie and take something as sometimes funny or unserious as penises, figuring out how to take that seriously. And I think actually showing it was a great way to sort of destigmatize it in the movie.
And I feel like the tone of the movie definitely like come across as very journalistic and very objective in a way of like just showing the procedure and the medical like conditions within the operation. Is that a tone that you have decided on going forward? Not something that's more like narrative, but more just kind of journalistic,
Yeah.
observational.
Yeah, we didn't want to tell the audience what to think in this film
Hmm.
because it's complex. And I mean, I guess I can only speak for myself, but like I am conflicted about a lot of the things that we talk about in the film and sort of excavate nuanced topics, and it's personal for everybody what they want to do with their own body and why they want to do that and how they want to do that. And I think that's part of the sort of like larger arc of the film is that like how complicit are all of us in body modification in general? We have accepted it to an extent. Certain patients you might like, they might come in and we'll film with them and I'll feel a certain way, or like maybe have a judgment passed about them, and then they'll mention something from their past or their personal life or something that got us here. And I think it really shocked me a lot. And I think
Yeah.
that's a big part of where we landed on the tone is that we wanted it to feel like a subject that is palatable,
Hmm.
albeit shocking because it is, but also not like slapstick in any way. Like we're taking the people in this film and their stories quite seriously. So I think the tone kind of reflects we're not trying to pass any judgment. We're just trying to sort of like show a world that people might not know about.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely the something that the film achieved. Like just having a very diverse range of subjects to like talk about like there are people who are brain cancer patients and people who are border agents. There's so many facades to the people who engage themselves into this operation.
A lot of like pretty conservative men we found in the Dallas clinic, some LGBTQ folks, but often pretty straight, often white conservative men were looking to get this procedure done. Some felt shame and some did not, which was also interesting on its own. As this sort of new medical frontier, as we sort of find it and figure out where we all fit in within it, interesting to see like who sort of like brought their shame to the clinic and who didn't.
Yeah, and I think a really interesting thing that I noticed in the film is how Dr. Phil, like his clinic has like the slogan of human advancement, which is just so interesting to me because I feel like this idea itself is just like if you hear about it, it's so like futuristic in a way, and that sort of makes it kind of neutral, like everyone could dip their toes into it. Rebecca, do you have anything that you want to talk about the subjects?
Jumping off of what Kerry was saying, I think when we were in the room with these people and just, throughout the process of filming, we were like, oh my God, this is such a crazy world. The edit was where we figured it all out, and our editor,
Hmm.
David Zucker, is amazing. We were having constant conversations with him about, more humor, less humor, and just figuring out the right line was really important.
We have Dr. Bell's storyline in the film, and we have two other main storylines. I just wanted to know, like, just because we talked about how diverse the clients are, like, how did you guys decide to like focus and narrow it down to these two people, which both come from a very specific and interesting background as well.
So Bill is actually not a doctor. We don't go into too much of it into the film, but he is a businessman who is totally able to perform this procedure in Dallas with the help of like a medical doctor that oversees. We sort of knew that like his clinic was almost like a church almost, and that the men coming to his it's not an operation, but sort of like operating table. It was like kind of like a church confession or something to them. So it felt very there was something very like holy and pristine about this very bizarre experience. It's not a surgery. The girth enhancing procedure is not. There is surgery in the film that is necessary for other reasons. It's hyaluronic acid lip filler that's injected. So it's, for all intents and purposes, like fairly safe if you know what's being injected and you trust the practitioner. It's fairly safe. It's just quite new and quite strange. And so it's like a weird little pocket of the world that it felt like we found like a vortex through that we could go through, and then his clinic kind of splintered out into David and Ruben's story, and we met both of them through him. He was
Yeah.
just sort of like the central glue holding the rest of it together. But we didn't know who the central characters would be at first. We filmed with a ton of men, and for
Hmm.
a long time thought that there would be a lot more of these like confessional scenes throughout the film. And when we got into the edit, they just sort of weren't working quite as well. But we do have a
Yeah.
lot of really fun like man on the street footage of people talking about size mattering and some pretty profound answers actually, but they just didn't fit in the final edit.
I feel like one thing that I think was really interesting about both Bill and Ruben is that like they're part of the queer community, which is definitely not like I would assume a lot of people come into this film would like imagine that to be. Like you said, there are a lot of conservative white men. That's probably how you would immediately think like those are the audiences, those are the clients. How is the relationship between the subject and the filmmakers? Like how are you guys like able to build that relationship with David and Ruben, Bill, because again, like the topic being like this and having to show vulnerability, having to show so many different parts of their lives.
When we were going into the procedure room and talking to these men, a lot of them were very hesitant, and that's why most of the like minor characters in the movie are either their face is blurred or you like only see below their nose because
Hmm.
there's a lot of shame in getting this procedure, unfortunately, and a lot of
Yeah.
the men didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to be identified. And I think immediately with Ruben, he was just open and like able to be vulnerable with us, which was amazing and was incredible of him.
Yeah.
So he immediately struck us as somebody who could be a great character for the film. And I think with David, I mean, I don't want to spoil anything for the movie, but
Yeah.
he's just so charismatic. And once we sort of understood the extent of his past experiences with enhancement, we sort of understood that this is a story that needs to be told and told with care and sincerity. And so we worked with him a lot in
Hmm.
figuring out the best way to do that. We have great communication, and I think it worked out really well.
How long have you been following these two people? Because I know that there's like drastic changes in their life, and I think that's what expands the scope of the movie and makes it better. And yeah, like how long were you able to follow them?
I think from the first time we filmed to the 1 year later at the very end, it was about 2 years, almost 2 years. It took a lot of time and patience, but I think seeing the transformation that the characters are able to go through during that time period was important to us.
We talked about like obstacles regarding making of this film, which is again like kudos to you guys for pulling that off. Kind of want to jump in to ask like some of the parts that you enjoyed the most during the production that wasn't as anxious and sensitive, and just some precious memories that you really kind of remember from this process.
The edit was fun, but also scary in some ways because we used the budget to just sort of like keep editing and keep editing. Had, deadlines to meet. So the edit was fun and felt, we'd take like a wild swing in one direction and show it to a couple friends and they'd like love it, or we'd take a wild swing in another direction and they'd hate it. And so it felt very dramatic with every rough cut. Just trying to open the world, I think, and make it feel relatable to everybody, whether they had had this very specific procedure or not. Felt like we were truly carving a statue out of clay and in a huge way. But I also loved the composition part. It was extremely cool and fun to see Gil and Sam, our composers, light up and go through the film and talk about all the feelings that we felt in a certain scene and what should be conveyed and what they thought. And they got super creative with the sounds, and it was so fun. Every single time they sent us a new track, it was like we would just send them like clapping emojis, like, "Oh my God, this is so crazy." So that was really fun
Amazing.
because they had really unexpected musical additions that I think really pushed the film in like a much more fun yet also sophisticated place than we had with just, the temp music.
I was also gonna say the edit. I
Yeah.
don't know why, but it was just like such a very cool and fun experience doing that, and working with our editor. But I think also, just the process of filming was incredible. And especially there's one surgery scene, and I got to go to the hospital at like 3 a.m. and scrub in, and I was standing watching this surgery happen for hours, and it was just a great time. So I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
This film, I think, just disregarding the subject matter and its shock value inherently, and I feel like there's so many vulnerable parts that were edited into it, which really helps with the impact that you two are trying to make and the messages that you want to convey. Because Manhood came out in a time when like cultures like looks maxing and this toxic masculinity is really on the rise for a lot of people, especially younger generation of men. Just kind of going back to originally, like why did you want to work on this film? Why did you want to tell this story? So what were like some takeaway that you want the male audiences to have from this film, but also I think really importantly, the women in the queer community who has intersex with this procedure, but also a lot of times just have this complex relationship with it.
It's a great question. I mean, I think Daniel and Rebecca as well got really interested in the subject early on because it was shocking and interesting. But Daniel had done a short film called You'll Be Happier at the New Yorker, and that's about the Brazilian butt lift, the deadliest procedure. It's a shocking and very scary procedure for many women that has just spread like wildfire. And so he was like, "What?" Sort of been there, done that. What else is out there that's interesting? But during the filming of Manhood, Trump was elected again. We knew that that would be impactful. You know, like the term looks maxing didn't exist, or not to my knowledge, like 2 years ago. But
Absolutely, no.
we could see, you know, people in Trump's cabinet talking about the importance of masculinity and what a man means now and what a man does versus what a woman does. And just these very binary ideas and old school ideas of what we should or should not be. And I thought that that was fascinating because it was so clearly like going back to a time that I grew up with my parents luckily saying like, you can do whatever a boy could do. And it was sort of
Yeah.
never a question, but there are many people who don't feel that way.
Mhm.
And regardless of whose sort of fault that is, it's happening and it's here. And I think examining it, picking it apart, and evaluating, like, how did we get here? And, like, what is going to keep propelling it forward was what I really wanted to dig into. It's an interesting time where men are sort of trying to assert their masculinity in this very abrupt, almost like gruff way. Yet
Yeah.
statistically, women are graduating from college more, owning homes more, becoming CEOs more. It's really a particular time in history where I think men are feeling disenfranchised for some reasons that I think are valid. And so that felt antithetical to maybe my like political beliefs, but it felt like, oh, what is going on here? Because men are taking some drastic measures and they're not all bad people. So
Yeah.
what is the center of this need? And like what is propelling this like insecurity in men?
Amazing. That's a great answer. And and there are so many subjects in the film that has this complex relationship with the idea as well. Like I remembered someone talking about how they kind of resent this idea of masculinity and how penis size could be a defining part of that. And while they're on the bed trying to do the procedure. So like it's just fascinating. And Rebecca, do you have anything to add on to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think just on top of that, it was really important to Daniel to have a very, non-male team in making this movie because it is, talking about a lot of men and a lot of male
Hmm.
issues. I do th think that having the feminine touch there really allowed the film to, you know, be very sensitive and very vulnerable. And I
Yes.
think ultimately everyone feels insecurity. And I mean, I
Yes.
certainly do. I think just being able to talk about it is so important. And I think, it's a lot easier for women to talk about it at this point. And so I'm hoping that while insecurity might plague us all, I'm hoping that we can all get to a point where we're able to talk about it more.
Yeah, I think just to quickly add to that, I think Daniel felt like women have had their bodies picked apart forever, and I think he felt like I would like to understand how women can intellectualize and empathize with these men's issues because, we could have made the sort of like low hanging fruit, maybe low brow version of this film, but none of us were really interested in that. We were interested in
Hmm.
finding complexities, maybe changing our own minds sometimes. So that's what's interesting about a doc is like you might go in thinking one thing and as a filmmaker learning that you feel a different way or that you felt this one way except for this one person that you met. And that's what it's all about. Is like nothing is ever one way. It's a zillion variations of gray, and I think that's what we're trying to show here, that it's not one way or the other. It's not big or small.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, that's a wonderful way to end the interview, I think. Just before we wrap up, I feel like I have the obligation to ask what's coming next for you guys, like the works in both Outer Boros and your personal works, just anything that we're excited to know about.
Definitely two, potentially three short films that will hopefully be out next year. We're pitching a series coming up that we can't talk too much about yet. And that's kind of our next big project. And pitching a few other things. I wish I could give more answers, but a lot of really interesting short docs, commercials, one music related doc about a rapper that we're working on. Hopefully nothing that anybody would expect. We would like to continue to do the unexpected. So yeah.
Sounds like very like a diverse range of
Yes.
works. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Rebecca, are you also in the process of Kerry or?
Yeah, Kerry covered it, but I just wanted to say thank you also for doing this interview and
No,
watching the
great.
movie. This is so special, so thank you.
Oh, of course, yes. You have the chance to see Manhood at Sheffield. Amazing film. Really great inquiry into this culture that is so timely right now. And I'm very, very lucky to have Rebecca and Kerry for the interview today. So, yes,
Yay.
thank you
Thanks for
guys. Follow
having us.
Manhood on social media. And yeah, I'll see you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.